So good day. My name is Michael McColl, and I want to just talk to you a little about Planview, Enterprise One, and its positioning within the market and within the corporate world. Today, you may be wondering what Planview are really thinking about, and they're about connecting strategy to delivery or connecting strategy for results. There are many different types of strategy within a corporation, but the key is how to make a plan for that strategy. The problem you've got today is there is a lot of change, a lot of misalignment. And what this is doing is it is pulling apart both the planning and delivery. It's creating uncertainty, it's creating a loss of confidence, and really what we're looking here is what Planview is looking to produce for its solutions, for its customers, but will almost allow a continuous planning cycle and is connected to the delivery. So today we're going to focus on the traditional PPM needs. Missing commitments. You can see your PMO is going to lose credibility if they're not delivering projects on time and within the prescribed budget. The classic PMO is issues of not having enough resources to get things done, the need for better planning of resources, the need for better forecasting of resources, the ability to actually prioritize work and reprioritize work on a continuous and adapting basis, the ability to adapt quickly with new strategies that the corporation may adopt. All of these present sort of blind spots which the PPM platform is looking to overcome. If we take a look at this slide, we can see at the top where strategy sits over everything. We can see that the demand on the left hand side, this actually really is a big funnel. It brings in ideas, either from a service desk or from departments, where people are coming and saying we want this kind of work or projects, and this funnels these ideas together. The next stage is sort of the demand, and how this is then takes this funnel and narrows this down into the planning stage of the option. And then it's how we deliver, how this can be aligned either to a strategy or even to an outcome. At the bottom of this sort of diagram as well, you can see it's how we work. What are the different solutions of working? Do you use Kanban? Are you more of a social media and Teams and other sort of social platforms you wish to integrate into your style of working as well? So some of the topics, and you can see here the functionality within the actual platform for Enterprise One. Road mapping is becoming very popular. OKRs is a hot topic right now in the industry. And again, support for the different sort of project methodologies, whether it be waterfall or lean and agile. So really just wanted to talk about where Planview sits with its competition. And now for several years running, Planview has consistently been a leading vendor across some of the key indices, for portfolio management or agile planning tools. And you can see how Planview is building out its product sets to meet the ever-changing demand of the market. So I'm now going to go into the demo for Enterprise One. So we're at the login screen for Enterprise One. We can see the account we're logging in with and the instance of Enterprise One we'll be logging in with. Your corporation might have enabled single sign-on, and hence this will be tied into your Active Directory credentials. I'm going to sign in with this particular user account, and we're first going to have a look at the user interface. Looking across the top, we can see our menu options, and I can see by clicking on these we have a drop-down dialog box. The dialog box for the work menu is telling me which particular favorites of the portfolios. A portfolio is a collection of projects and I can see at the moment I'm looking at this particular portfolio. If I wanted to jump to a different portfolio view in my favourites, I can just select and then click. We can see the portfolio view on the sort of the second bar, and what we've got underneath here is a ribbon. This is really telling the story of the portfolio. It's extracting key metrics, so at a glance I can see the health and some of the key parameters of this portfolio being displayed. And I can run across here. I've got context sensitivity with the mouse, so it gives me sort of a breakdown as well of what's going on. With the ribbon, if I wish to customize this ribbon, I can customize. I can add additional tiles. I can go to the manage option, and we can see here a list of tiles. You can either create your own custom tiles, adding your own custom reports, or you can use sort of the out of the box reports and tiles which are available from the get-go. Moving through sort of the next part of the interface, and I'm looking at the portfolio here, I can see sort of the column headings. It may well be that I want to look at the different column sets. Column sets are groupings of columns or fields that allow you to apply a lens, a different view of the data of the portfolio and the corresponding projects. Here I'm looking at a project dashboard. I'm going to have a look at a Gantt timeline. Let's have a look at a project manager's view, and we can see the column sets have now changed, and we've got some more pertinent information relating then to this particular portfolio with this project manager's view. We can also look at the tiering or apply sort of a way of looking at the filtering, and at the moment we're filtering sort of on a work sponsor, and we can see our toggles here which we can expand out. We can apply sort of the tiering of the data by selecting our options here, and maybe we wish to look at this at sort of more of a work status rather than a project sponsor. And we can see how the data then shifts. We can see how the data also updates here within the portfolio. What is key to also sort of point out as well when we're looking at this is how the columns themselves can actually incorporate color. So you can actually highlight columns to view based on the data and the field settings. So rather than having an expanse of just white cells with data, you can actually customize columns with colors, and particular values can then represent different color schemes as well. Okay. If we wanted to, we could actually export this out. We could export this out. So let me just set this back to our column setting for sort of project dashboards. If I wanted to export this, we can see here an option. We've got Excel or PDF, and we could, if we had Power BI installed or PowerPoint, we could export out from this option here. I'm looking at a Gantt chart, and depending on the view, the column setting views as well, maybe we have sort of a Gantt chart being incorporated. Again, we've got context sensitive here, so I can look at an individual task and the settings for this task. Also, it's been baselined, so I can see. I can look at the sort of the timeline for this Gantt chart and alter it, potentially in months or in years if I needed to, like so. Running across the top as well, let's have a little look at the sort of the search functions. So if I wanted to do a search here, and I was looking for, say, particularly all searches with, let's try one with some more searches, context sensitive searching, and it looks across the PPM platform. It will look at sort of the word and pull up all the data entities which are pertinent and containing that word. So very quickly I can identify and find data and information I'm looking for. That's looking across the entire PPM platform. We've also got another search feature here, and this is within the portfolio view. It may be that your portfolio has many projects and you wish to apply a filter lens. So for here I may wish to just look at, say, everything beginning with cost, as you can see, or maybe it's just 18, as you can see. So we're able to do a filter within the portfolio or do a search if we wanted to across the entire platform. Moving across as well, we can see our application launcher. If you're running an on-premise solution, you may not have some of these options. The cloud or the SaaS-based version allows you to sort of launch multiple products, and one of the key here is embedded in is the customer success. This is an access to their help desk, their library embedded within the system. I can launch this from here and it will open up then this sort of the customer success center. This can be set up to be sort of context sensitive, so if I'm in a portfolio view, it will launch into sort of a portfolio sort of help desk setting going through. Moving along a little bit more further, we can see the user preferences. I can see what user I'm logged into. I can see sort of the preference or sort of units of scale for this user. I can see the notification settings as well, kind of how I'm going to be notified via SMTP or whether internal system. I can also, as I said, reset my password here. If I'm not using single sign-on, I can actually change the password of this account within here. Having looked at sort of the top here, we can see one of the other nice features I really like is the ability to actually export some of these views as an export as a PowerPoint timeline. So if you've got the sort of PowerPoint add-on for sort of doing timelines, you can see how quickly we can export all of this and just into a PowerPoint Gantt chart with the add-on from here. So this sort of concludes sort of just a little look at the user interface. So I'd now like to take a look at the strategic structure within the Enterprise One. I'm going to go to the Strategies menu, and I can see here a listing of grouping of strategies. Again, we've got different grouping of portfolios with Enterprise One. A portfolio of resources or portfolio of programs or projects. I'm going to select this particular one here. And again, I'm going to have a look at the portfolio view. When we enter this, we can see that most of the data has been locked down for this particular user. Again, this is assigned via sort of the roles and features. And the whole point of this particular view, the strategic view, is to allow you to define the strategic mission and initiatives. It allows you to identify and categorize and assign ownership which will support your strategic missions. It will allow you to estimate the cost and budget of these initiatives and to also realize the value and benefits within each of these initiatives and what they'll deliver. And even if I'm using the word initiative, it could be any word which means groupings, say epic or programs. And realistically, what we see here, the outcomes would be that you're going to organize your strategy, you're going to form a strategic plan, you're going to see the elements easily, and you're going to identify progress as we move through using the road mapping feature. So across the top here we can see a range of tiles associated to the strategy, and these elements all make up sort of that strategic view. I can see here a particular one, programs over budget, and this helps me identify those programs which are redlining, which we've got issues with going forward. If I go back to my table view and I have a look at this, what we can see here is the enterprise, the corporation has 3 missions. Now, and these have been deconstructed down into objectives which will drive these missions, and we can see these as I expand and toggle these. The objectives can then be broken down into strategies, as you can see, and then further down, if needed be, into projects and programs, as you can see going further down here. We talked about sort of strategy and projects and programs, but we could use epic and themes. It doesn't have to be one particular methodology. You can mix and match these within this table view. So what we're going to have a look at here is having a look at, say, the program. And if I right click here, I can see sort of options associated for this particular program. If I wanted to, I could mark these as favorite. This might be my particular one I want to particularly track going forward, as you can see. And I can see a project. What is important to note is while I'm picking on these three dots, how the menus change. So from here I can look at the finance, the work, the project schedule, the resource assignments from a project perspective. When I look at a strategy, you can see I can see the strategic view. So we can see how it's context sensitive, showing me the different options depending on whether I'm looking at an objective or a strategy or a project as we go down. Across the top here we can see the view, and let's just move this. We can see a table of data, and we can see column headings, our column sets, and column set heading here is listed. It may be that you want to actually look more at an event timeline. So from a financial perspective, how far the finance has been built out, and we can see this showing us across several years the cost variance if we needed to. You can also see as well, if we wanted to, we can change our view. We don't have to be dealing with numeric data. Say for example, we might want to look at the portfolio attributes. This is more a textual base about the line of business and the regulatory requirements rather than the finance. You can see all the data is here, and depending on what we select from our column sets, we can actually get different grouping of fields for a common purpose. So I go back to my data. It may well be I want to see a road mapping, a visual representation of the timelines, and we can see this is what we can actually see here. We can see here showing sort of milestones, whether these are sort of both corporate or project based milestones. We can see slippages, we can see release dates, and just how close or how far away we are from meeting these. We can mix and match epic and feature and release dates within this roadmap view, along with project and program views as well. We needed to. And finally, if we wanted to, we can export this information. We've got the ability to export it to a range of different sort of formats, including Power BI. And again, we can set our visual preferences, the colouring within the roadmap, also the sort of the tree length, and associated work and outcomes as well we can set here. So I'm going to now look at an end-to-end sort of life cycle by creating a new project and then adding new types of entities to the project and approving these, moving through a basic life cycle and workflow steps. Here you can see the new button within the screen. I'm logged in as a sort of a project manager and appropriate roles and grants. If I select on the new, I can actually see the different types of entities I can create from underneath here. All of these can have a life cycle process applied to them. So I'm going to go forward and create a select work or project. This is going to open up the first screen for me to populate, and I'm going to select, if I wanted to, the different types of field entry. I can do searches, and we can see if we've got anything close, and we can see just by typing 18 I can actually do a search. I've got other options here for sort of a data picker which looks at the organization directory, and I can select from that way, but I'm going to just do the basic. I'm going to give this project a name, so I'll call this virtual project 4. If I wanted to, I could give a description. I can see here work type. This is the life cycle step or steps workflow which is available to the different project types. If this was an agile type project or different types of other project, we can set up different types of lifecycle workflow. For this particular demonstration, I'm going to just select the workshop, a nice straightforward sort of lifecycle process step for demonstrating the various handoffs. I'm going to see I've completed most of that important information in the mandatory fields, marked by red, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. We now go to the second screen, and we can see here some mandatory fields requiring my information, so I'm going to again use my default user I'm logged in as. For this one, I'm actually going to select a different user, and use a resource manager for the sponsorship. You can see in the bottom section here, we've also got our risk-reward complexity analysis. This is the ability to add a numeric indices to look at priority weighting. Based on the questions and based on the kind of responses, each one is given a weighted score, which then calculates a preliminary score for this particular project. And you'll see this later when we're looking at investment and strategies, how we calculate priority. And again, all of this is configurable for yourself, depending on your organization requirements. So having keeping the defaults, I'm going to hit the save and complete. Okay, so now I've gone through to my sort of next form. I'm going to have a look where I am within the life cycle for this project. So I'm going to select the life cycle and just review this. It's a very basic life cycle, and we can see here we've got it set up. If you're used to the life cycle screen, we can move around using the left hand pane. The right hand pane gives us the ability to look at the log and look at when each step was actually actioned and at what time and date. For here I'm looking at the intake, so I'm going to expand this section, and we can see straight away here where we are. We're actually now at the point of approving the actual schedule and plan. And again, these types of workflows and templates can be built into the system if we need to. So I'm actually going to have a look at the schedule before I approve this. I'm going to open this up. This opens the standard sort of Enterprise 1 schedule. You have the ability to use templates, so depending on your project methodology and your life cycle stages, this can be modeled to meet your organization requirements. And we can see here the main stages. I can then start to build out my work breakdown structure by inserting tasks and then setting my predecessors, successors, even assignees here. But I'm going to take the standard sort of default template, and I'm going to submit this schedule and mark it as complete. Okay, this now moves to the finance planning section, and we can see here the dates running along the top. We can see if I wanted to, I can submit either CapEx or OpEx, so I'm going to go ahead and submit some for the future. My example here. So we'll also do a little bit of OpEx. And really all I'm doing is just entering data, so I can just build out this financial plan, and then I can move this forward for submission as such. So it's just, if you wanted to within the finance screen, and you wanted to add on a particular line item which isn't in this particular categorization, you can create your own line items. I can right click on the three dots, and if I wanted to, I create a particular line item marked here using sort of the form here to create a specific line item for the finance. Once you're happy and you've created and entered your data for the finance, I'm going to accept this, and I'm going to the top right hand corner, and we can see here I'm going to close and complete, and this life cycle will then marked as completed for finance. So I'm going to select yes here. Okay, so I'm now going to log out and log back in as the resource manager. So I'm going to sign out using the standard mechanism, and then sign back in again. And let's select my resource manager and sign in. You'll notice this particular role has a different set of ribbons and tiles being made available, but the one I'm more important in is the tile marked active lifecycle steps. I'm going to click onto that, and I can see my workshop project here, which was being marked for me, is now awaiting my approval. So I'm going to select this, and I have the options here to either approve or disapprove this particular financial plan. I'm going to select approve and then select OK. And I move on to my next screen. It can keep within a particular form, and I'm going to approve the configuration form as well. So I'm going to say even allowing you to put comments on. And mark OK for that. Okay. So I'm now going to log back out, and I'm going to log back in again now as my project manager or user 18, the demo account I've been using for this particular workflow. We can start to see as well down here for my user the projects, and down here we have our workshop project number 4. If I want to have a see the life cycle or workflow, I can select a particular column, mark workshop. That was the particular life cycle template we applied to this project, a very basic one. And we can now open up the life cycle. We can see the intake of this. We can see that each of the steps has now been completed, moving forwards. And if we have a look, also we can see the approval process, where we've been using Resource Manager 18 to actually approve and sign off on some of the key stages within here. So what we've demonstrated here is how to create a basic new project with a basic life cycle step, the ability to approve at various stages, whether it's finance, whether it's the work schedule, and also logging in as different users and approving the process and moving the process forward, as we can see. So we're going to have a look now at navigating the work and assignments. So from our portfolio view, I'm going to select the chatbot rollout, and from clicking the ellipse or the 3 dots, I'm going to select work and assignments. This is going to now open up the work and assignment screen. We can see here, based on sort of the work breakdown structure template, we can see our project schedule or project plan, as sometimes referred to, and the main sections of this plan, or a WBS work breakdown structure. If I wanted to, I could actually pivot the view, and we can see a view set to schedule. I can have a look at assignments, and I can see the assignments between each of these phases and tasks. So I'm going to pivot back to schedule, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert 3 tasks. I right click on the cell where I'd like to insert the task under, and I can see the options here. I can insert, or I can insert under. Again, you could use the insert key on the keyboard, or using control and insert to do this. And I'm going to insert. I'm going to give this a name. Let's give it activity 1, and we can see the schedule start and schedule finish and days from there. And we have that has now been inserted as a task, and we can see as well the task there. I'm going to insert another one underneath here, so let's do 2. We can see that that's indented. If I wish to realign the indentation or outdent, I can right click again and move the indentation of these tasks. Let's stick another one, activity 3, and I'm going to assure my outdentation works. This one I'm actually going to select a different duration. I'm going to select 10 hours, and you can see with the code that once I'm using hours, it will automatically convert back to days. And finally, I'm actually going to insert underneath here, I'm going to insert a milestone. So they're all aligned. If I actually use my tab key, across, and go across to the column marked milestone flag, I can now inform that the schedule plan that this particular line item is a milestone. And this is reflected by the symbol on the Gantt chart. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is create some relationships between these three activities and this milestone. It's important to note that you must select the activities in the correct order. So I've selected the first activity followed by the second activity. I'm then going to do a right hand click, and under relationships I'm going to create a chain. You'll see we can have a line here indicating that there is a relationship between these two tasks, but what has not happened, as you'll notice, is that the second task has not been aligned. That is because the critical path does not run automatically on every time you make a change to the project schedule. If I want to actually run the critical path, we can see here in the top bar the run schedule, and we can now see that it has run the critical path algorithm and has now updated accordingly. I'm now going to create a constraint between activity 3 and the milestone. I'm going to select these two tasks, and looking across under the constraint type, I'm going to double click and set this as start no later. I'm going to set a date for this, and I'm going to push this date out till then. I'm now going to look at sort of requirements and allocation. Requirement is a role allocated to the task, and assignment is a named individual allocated to the task. So for activity 1, I'm going to select my 3 dots, and I can go down to the assignment section and select new requirement. We can see here now an organizational structure of the resources, and I'm going to open these up, and I'm going to select this particular role, an application development business analysis, and select OK. If I want to select a named individual, I'm going to do that on my second activity. This time it's not a new requirement, I'm going to do a new allocation. I'm going to select the new allocation, and I'm going to go down, and what we can see now is rather than roles, I can actually see named individuals, and within this demo platform we've got these called as team members. So I'm going to select these, select 2 and select OK. If I want to see these allocations and requirements, I'm going to pivot my view now to schedule an assignment, and what we can see is indicated here is a requirement, a role, and underneath here is a named individual. Okay, if we have a look at the state, depending on your permissions, you can automatically approve this particular request for this named individual. If not, it would go off to the resource manager for approval. We can indicate the kind of utilization I would like of this named individual. can see here, we can enter these via a percentage factor going through. Once we've entered sort of our utilization and the state, we may wish to now look at sort of a more of a task information, which is a bottom pane. So I'm going to switch on the task information, and we can see for these two named individuals, the bottom pane now opens up with more information and detail about the usage of these individuals. If you find that your Gantt chart timeline is not correctly displaying, a useful tip would be to go to the sprocket icon, and if you select the sprocket icon, ensure on the General tab that only the earliest task assignments are being displayed. Otherwise you may be displaying maybe months or years previously, but there's no task assignment. So I'm going to log in now as a resource manager. You'll notice the rhythm along the top here is reflected of the type of resource manager role and the type of activities that resource manager will conduct. I'm going to have a look for this resource manager requirements that he is to fill. So I'm going to select the requirements to fill tile. We can see here various requests and the stage in the project cycle. I'm going to select one of these, say this one here, the design, and do a right click. You'll see the options here is fill requirement. I've got the option to either search, reserve, or actually allocate a named individual to this particular request. So I'm going to select on that. We can see a list of users, and I'm going to select the user and select OK. We've now allocated an assignee to this particular resource request. If we have a look also at the assignments and requests, these are where we have got requirements have come through, but maybe awaiting for my approval as a resource manager. I can see here the name and the actual project, but these have actually been requested, reserved, and are now awaiting my final approval under the remit of a resource manager role. If I select on the actions, the three dots, I have an option here for either approving, denying, or even making sort of additional information. So I'm going to approve this request for Liz Carter, and we can see, there we go. We're going to now have a look at the resource fulfillment capability within Enterprise One. I've logged in as a resource manager. You can see my credentials there, and I can see the appropriate sort of tiles and ribbons for this particular role. I'm going to change my view from a portfolio to a resource management and assignments view by clicking on the three dots, when we can see we've now opened a new screen. We've got a list of resources. This particular resource manager is responsible for 31 resources within this resource pool. We can actually see the resources on this screen, and next to it we can actually see their utilization being shown. And as we can scroll down, we can see therefore utilization rates across this resource pool. The color coding for an FTE, we can see light blue obviously is starting to show that they're in used, and obviously red is where they're overcapacitized, overutilized within this particular role. We can adjust these particular timelines if we wanted to. We're looking at it in months, and we could do this from weeks if we wanted to. So you can obviously view different sort of timelines and the utilization as if we wanted to. I'm going to scroll down and have a look for a heavily utilized one, and we can see here Sven. If you actually click, we can see all of the tasks that have been allocated to Sven as a resource, the actual projects or works, and also an indication of the priority of these tasks as well. We can manually, if we want, alter the utilization. So for this one I'm going to take a medium priority on this particular task, and I'm actually going to reduce it further down and then make this so. And you can see now how Sven utilization has changed as I've manually distributed the sort of the loading on this particular resource based on the utilization. It may not be appropriate for you to sort of change manually, and it may well be that you have to actually substitute the resource completely out with a new resource. It may not be that you can actually just change the allocations to tasks. To actually do a substitution, here we go back to the three dots up against the particular time, and I do a right click, I can see the substitute, and if I actually select substitute there, I can then go through my organization chart looking for a particular user. I think I'll use this user here and select, and we can see that this is now being substituted. The task now disappears from that particular user as it is now being reallocated to the substitute resource which I've just selected going forward. And we also have a look at the interface as well. We can see here that we're sorting on resource name, and using either the group button to switch this on and off, you can actually apply a different type of lens to actually view your resources. At the moment we're looking at resource name. It may well be, if I want to do, I can drag this onto the other side of the bar here, and now we're sorting via team and then resource name. And we can see there we've got team beta, and as they expand out we can see then the particular resource name. If you don't find a particular filter, we can actually, on the drop down list, we can actually set ones we're looking for. So this could be any particular parameter you're actually looking for. And again, we can move these around, and we can see here. So it's a great way of actually being able to view your resource pools and applying different tierings and filters to view the data differently. The other component to have a look at here is to have a look at the columns. And if we say, for example, our work name, the number of projects, we can actually see how we've got some aggregators. I can set an aggregator, the count here, and this is now displaying again the sum of projects that this particular resource has been allocated to. Let's look at Bill Smith, showing us as 5, and we can see 5 tasks. So a very good way of being able to have a look at a resource and see how many projects they've actually been allocated to. I'm going to take this aggregator off. Another one which is quite popular is the effort, the amount of effort that has been loaded. It's a good indication of the popularity of a particular resource. I can see here Bob Andrews is very popular, and if I actually look out, we can see he's got a standard number of projects, but as we scroll along the screen there, we can actually see he's been sort of captured and allocated way off into sort of the next year. And again, another good effort is another good indication of sort of the popularity of a particular resource, or how long it's actually been allocated to individual projects or tasks going forwards. So I'm going to switch off the effort side here, and we can see the next thing to have a look at is to see about sort of completing requirements. So right at the top we've got an area here called requirements to fill, and if I expand that, we can see these are tasks which have yet to have a resource actually allocated. If I wanted to actually sort of allocate a resource to them, I can click on the 3 dots next to it, and we can see a fill requirement. If I select search, we open up our resource pool. You can see that it's context sensitive, the mouse, and by hovering the mouse over the individual sort of resources, I can see the type team they're a member of, the actual role they're particularly filling, and also we can see here a score indication as well. You can see this particular resource here, user 01, has a higher score. This will be because of either qualifications or the actual role is more matching and suited to this particular requirement, task requirement. So I'm going to select this, and as you can see, as soon as I select, the bottom pane opens up. With the task, I can see the utilization of this particular user in this task, and if I'm happy with this allocating, I'm going to select save, and we can see now we've actually allocated a resource to a particular task. The final component of this screen is to have a look at sort of personal holidays or vacations. So for example, it may well be that you have vacations coming up on a resource and you wish to block them out from the resource calendar so they're not allocated for a particular week when they're taking a vacation or the sort of statutory leaves. To do that, I'm going to pick this user here, and we can see by clicking on the three dots in the left pane, new standard activity. By selecting that, I can type in the activity. This could be sort of a holiday if I wanted to. I could select the start and finish for the holiday, also whether or not they're available. Maybe they're only away for a few days or in the afternoons, they're attending a personal course, and it gives me the options here to therefore on an individual basis select whether or not their utilization is at 100% or has to be dialed back because of a sort of personal interest as such. So cancel that. So that's an introduction to the sort of the resource management and assignment screen within Enterprise 1. So we're going to have a look at the sort of financial and capacity planning module within Enterprise 1. I've now logged in and I'm now going to access this. I go to the planning menu and I can see the particular portfolio I'm going to have a look at, and I'm going to select the investment and capacity planning screen, or ICP as it is known. The whole point of this sort of the investment and capacity planning screen is so that we can actually rank our line items. These line items could be projects, programs, initiatives, which we can apply a ranking criteria so we can have a see how well they are at meeting our investments and goals. If we have a look along the top, we can obviously see we're viewing via ranking. The top of the bar there is unranked projects. We have 2 line items there, and underneath we have a ranked set of ranked projects listed below. We can actually create different scenarios, and by looking at the top right hand side there, we can actually see our actual forecast. We've got a scenario A coloured in by green if we wanted to. And this again is a sandpit area. We can play around with the data, we can manipulate the data so that we can then have play with the types of which projects we wish to accept and go forward with based on sort of the investment and capacity planning. To create a new scenario, we can quickly select this and we can allocate it to colour, and we can go forwards with that. We have a look on the top screen. We've got all our rank by criteria. If I wanted to add a criteria to rank by, I select the add criteria, and we can see the different parameters or fields we have available within the system, and I'm going to do one by preliminary score. Remember, preliminary score is a standard set of 3 questions that apply a numeric indices on individual line items or projects where we can then rank these. So I'm going to do this on a preliminary score and do this descending and hit apply. We can now see, based on the preliminary score, descending with the highest score going down to the lowest score, and we've now applied our ranking. You'll also notice as well we actually have colour coding as well, and we can see these sort of colour coding on some of these columns. This colour coding indicates that we are looking at profitability. Obviously we've got a profitability column here. We wouldn't be going forward with projects which were not going to be profitable or lose the organisation money. If we wanted to set this kind of colour coding and set the sort of constraints, we go to our sprocket icon and we can see here the ranking we can set, and we can see how we can set our settings and display settings so we can actually give a better visual interpretation of the data when we're viewing it. So we're going to go through and step through a ranking scenario. The whole point of the screen is to follow through the standard process of these 4 functions so that we can apply a ranking criteria. We can analyze then the impact of these line items, these projects and our goals, and then we can shift and balance resources to adjust to these new demands. And the whole point of this is so we are maximizing the amount of work we can process through the organization while still keeping within the constraints. As you can see here, I've already set a ranking. If I wish to unrank these, and you can see how we can do this, and put these back. We'll also notice as well that we've got ticks. These are approved projects. Ones without a tick, or ones which are still waiting to be approved. And you can see therefore how we can rank and unrank different line items, and we can therefore go forward for approving these projects. So I'm going to set up a rank, and let's set one up here. As I said before, I'm going to do a preliminary score, and we'll apply that to everything. You can see as well, if we wanted to, we could actually drag and drop. There may be special instances where a particular line item has special regulatory requirements and therefore has to be an exception to the ranking criteria. And if I wanted to, I could take this R&D project, which has a low score. I could actually just drag and drop that higher up here as well. We can see how the ranking is down there. I'm now going to show you the Analyze section, and by selecting this, we can see now the screen has now split into 2. So what we've got here at the top are accepted projects, underneath are still unremained projects. I have open my Gantt chart and scroll across. You can see when these projects were starting and kicking off. Again, we can adjust the Gantt chart timeline to view it in the appropriate timeline we wish to see. You'll see that we've got 2 initiatives or 2 projects in the bottom pane, and we can see summation columns, benefits and costs which are pertinent to the organisation. If I grab one of these projects and move it to the top here, you can see how the numeric summation, the aggregation of value now has changed along each of these columns. I move this up here as well, and you can see there. We're still showing as green, so we're not actually have any issues from a budgetary or finance issue. But what I do notice now is that I've got a red alert showing over on the right hand pane. And even though we have the money to go forward with these projects, the system now is telling me that we have resource constraints. So we can have a C, and we can see that we've got resource constraints. And if I scroll my timeline, I can see where the resource constraints are, and I can see these particular months. I can see are indicating red. We've overcapacitized our resource pool. If I expand out the remaining capacity, I can see the actual capacity row. This is the amount of capacity. This can be measured in dollars or effort or FTE or actual time per resource. And I can actually see the actual portfolio demand. And we're over there by about 11 as such running through. If I want to break this down further, and I can say this is on a particular role, a business analysis role, I can expand this and I can see the projects where the demand is being made. And you can see a business analyst is actually being made across all of the projects. I can see also, if I wanted to, the ranking of these projects as well. And I can see an indication there in the sort of pink projects which I may wish to therefore remove or make a change to, so that I'm not over capacitizing my resource pool. So there are several ways to do this. The first one is we could actually just deactivate these projects. So I could go back where I wanted to the rank or the analysis, and where it was a mandatory project, I can pull that into there, into the bottom screen. You can see this is no longer now accepted as being active. And if I go back to my balance view, we can see how the number has come down. Still not enough. I could do this for the mobility project as well. Because this is a mandatory project, maybe that is not the best approach, and therefore we're going to have a look at other mechanisms we can use. So I'm going to toggle back to the balance screen, and we can see there are two problem line items with projects. The second option, if we wanted to, is we could actually use sort of change line attributes. This is where you're literally using an outside resource pool and you're bringing in specialized resource, potentially to fill in the gaps. You could use your rates and your rate card to indicate a change in rate, because this is now an outside business analysis role. And again, the finance screens would update automatically if we were to go down this option and use an external sort of resource pool to supply this particular role, to offload our resource pool here. A third option is to adjust the timeline on these projects which are causing overcapacity on the resource pool. So I'm going to change my view now from balance to shift. And we can see here a list of projects. We've got the Gantt chart being displayed here of where the resource is required during the run of the project. We can see red indicating where we have a shortfall in resource capacity. The bottom screen, let's even this out a little, indicates for each project, say for mandatory project, the different types of roles. And I can see here in this sort of time phase, I can see those months where the capacity is being constrained. The grey represents the resource allocated across the projects. The red where we actually have a shortened view going forward, where capacity has been over capacity. You can see how context sensitive the mouse is, so I can hover and I get information across the months. It may well be a case that in fact I want to just push this project out, and you'll notice as I push the project out across the busy 3-4 months, and I've pushed this out and release, you can now see the profile. I've pushed this out 1 more month. The projects are no longer overcapacitized. We've delayed the start of these projects by several months. Let's go back to our balance view, and we can see we've now 3 of the 4 months have now been cleared up. It may well be that you're not able to push the projects out because they have to start at a particular time. The other mechanism then is to condense the timeline of a project. It's sometimes known as called crashing the project, where you reduce the length of time to run the project, but you actually increase the resource. By reducing the time, we can actually grab it by one end And we can see here, and we've not just moved the project, but we've also overcapacitized it onto a length. So we have multiple mechanisms of what if scenarios, and this is what the purpose of this screen is we can play around with start dates of projects, we can play around with the length of projects, we can look at ranking projects, and we can therefore use that ranking to do the analysis of which projects we need to deprioritize or actually manipulate the data. So this now concludes our demonstration for Enterprise 1, and thank you for your attention.